and welcome back to another episode of the Griffin Report podcast. Back here on Zoom for episode 7, meaning we have another special guest that is out of town here in the Buffalo area. But that doesn't mean that he does not have Canisius ties. He's actually an adjunct professor as we speak in the sports administration program, and currently the vice president of marketing and creative services for the Carolina Hurricanes, Mr. Dan LaTorraca. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Griffin. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to actually get to know you previously before, truthfully, it was my second year here. So I didn't really know as many of the alumni base, but during my time with the Batavia Muck Dogs, you were extremely influential in my social strategy. And it's great to see you do so great right now. But before we get into it, it's interesting. We actually have the Buffalo Sabres going to Raleigh tonight and playing the Hurricanes. How has the season been so far for you?
It's been good. It's always the first month of the season is always interesting here in Raleigh because we have the state fair in town and we share a parking lot with the fairgrounds. So typically we'll have one home game early in October, and then the team takes a West Coast road trip for like 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So they're finally back in town this week, and we're excited to host Buffalo. There's a lot of Buffalonians that do live down in the Southeast here. I know when I was in Charlotte for a while, there's tons of Bills fans there, and there's a ton of Sabres fans here. So we're always excited because their money is as green as anybody else's, but I just love the energy that they bring too. So should be a great crowd tonight. We're always excited to host them.
Yeah, we actually there's like a road trip crew. There's always certain places each year that the Sabres pick to have a big group go down there. And this Eastern Coast trip, if you will, down to Florida for you guys, and then down to Tampa. So it'll be interesting to see how many Royal Blue jerseys are in the crowd. But we'll start from the beginning for you. So you grew up in Jersey, actually went to the University of Scranton. Was working in sports always kind of the realm of opportunity that you wanted to get into, or was that just something that you explored into later in life?
A distant dream for me. I mean, I grew up a huge Yankees fan, huge fan of baseball, something that's just part of our family's culture. And, I always loved it, but never thought I'd ever have the opportunity to work in sports or the industry in any type of capacity. So I actually went to school to be a teacher, and I wasn't that great at it at the time. Still working on getting better at it, but that was something that I went into Scranton for, and it was fun. That's when The Office was in its prime in the early 2000s, and the Yankees had just moved their farm team from Columbus, or a AAA team, to Scranton, replacing the Phillies there. And I kind of looked at that as a sign and an opportunity to get more involved in sports journalism. That's what I wanted to be when I made the jump into communications. And I was kind of a lousy sports writer too, but I spent a lot of time working for the school paper, the city paper, a magazine called Pinstripes Plus, which was like an affiliate of Scout.com at the time, and started a blog. Those were big back then, and did everything I could to just get as many bylines and as much content strategy and writing experience as I possibly could while I was in college. And it was great, watching guys like Phil Hughes and Java Chamberlain come through the minors and blow people away was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that. Scranton was a D3 school, and while they have a powerhouse women's basketball program, it's not exactly a school known for their athletics. So minor league baseball was sort of it for us, and I really enjoyed that and was hopeful that I could turn that into a career in some capacity once I graduated and moved back home to Jersey.
Yeah, so it was interesting for you covering for Pinstripe Plus these Yankee teams, the farm systems, not even just in Scranton, but collectively as well. Then you pick up a job as an SEO and digital media planner. So what was the distinct, because obviously being a sports writer and a beat reporter is much different than that. What made you want to go to a different place in the communications realm?
Yeah, so that was around 2008, 2009, and we were kind of hitting another recession there. So I was looking for any job, and I realized just how difficult it was to find a job in sports or sports media in the New York market. Plus, I wasn't very good at it yet. So, I found a job in SEO, which was search engine optimization, and that was basically like a mix of like making your website work the right way to come up higher in Google when you search for a certain term, like Canisius College, and make sure it comes up first, or colleges in Buffalo. It'll come up higher based on how you structure your site, but also it was like the early makings of social media strategy too. And I really took a liking to that. So always wanted to work in sports at that point. That was my mission and kind of something I really wanted to strive for. But I didn't really have an opportunity to get in there yet. So I tried to build as many skills that possibly could, worked for 2 different advertising agencies and picked up some pretty big clients and some skills too in how to market and how to use digital media to engage people or make money or anything like that. And I realized I could use that skill set almost for free, kind of undercutting my value, but also undercutting competition. And I consulted for some sports teams, doing a lot of their digital and social media work there for a couple minor league baseball teams, independent baseball teams, and kind of padding my resume a bit. And it worked. After about a year of that and working for ad agencies and stuff, I had two job offers on the table, and one was with an MLB team and one was with the Carolina Panthers. And drove down to Charlotte from Jersey and fell in love with the area. And 2 weeks later, I moved down there and I took over what was initially their social, just their social media and all that for the Panthers. And then that role exploded into anything digital, whether it was their mobile app or their website or what have you. So it was a lot of fun. I'm sure we'll get more into that, but it was an interesting road and how I fell into it. I used sort of digital marketing as a backdoor way to get my dreams of working in sports, and it kind of worked out.
Yeah, I mean, that obviously opened doors for you to get into the professional realm as well. So you get there to the Panthers, you're the manager of digital content and strategy. It was an interesting time for the organization as well. They're coming off a 2-14 season. You were like a rookie with Cam Newton that first year. So what was that like for you?
It was something else. I mean, I'm really glad that I didn't have anyone over me that understood social, because it was a learning curve. I mean, I had managed a whole lot of digital stuff for brands, but never had my fingers on the keys of live covering or live tweeting a football game or all that. So it was a lot of trial by fire. But after about a year, I started putting together a strategy that I thought would help grow that brand. But coming off a 2-14 season, the fan base was in a unique spot with the first overall pick. A guy like Cam Newton was at the time the biggest star really that Charlotte sports had seen in a while. And then you had Ron Rivera coming in as head coach. So we all kind of got to grow together through that. And having an athlete like Cam, that it's like having $1 million marketing department at your fingertips. I mean, he was photogenic and energetic, and he could bring so much to the table on the field and off the field that it was a great resource to have, and allowed the Panthers to sort of take a different approach to how they were going to use social and digital media to market, because they didn't have a marketing department. At the time, ownership didn't really believe in a marketing team, so digital was it. And that's a lot to put on the shoulders of a 24-year-old kid who had no experience really working full time for a sports team, but we found a way to make it work, and it paid off big time.
Yeah, and again, you kind of alluded to it, but that is almost the beginning years of apps like Instagram and Twitter, where they really
Yeah.
started to transcend, specifically in sports. So, in your specific position, how was it implementing certain strategies on those applications for the Panthers?
Yeah, when I first got there, Instagram didn't even exist yet. It was Facebook and Twitter did, and Pinterest was starting to be a thing, and Foursquare was still big, and Google Plus was starting to get in there. And the thing about the Panthers and a lot of teams in the Southeast is they're new. The Hornets, the Canes, all of them, they're still dealing with their first like generation and a half of fans. So we knew that at the Panthers we had to take a different approach, because you're never going to match the passion and the history of certain teams like the Bills or like the Patriots or the Cowboys. So we had to take sort of a unorthodox approach to social media and really inject a different type of attitude in there, and also answering fans. If you look back to social back in the day, the real forward thinking brands like Zappos and things like that were brands that actually were human and responded to people. And that's something that you don't need history to do that. You don't need $1 million marketing budget to do that. All you need is effort to respond to people and make them feel like they're part of a community. And that was the early strategy early on. And then understanding the language our fans used in order to kind of leverage that for the voice that the team would soon adopt when the time was right. And after a couple of years of making people comfortable with sort of the direction we wanted to go, and sort of, for lack of a better word, kind of being jerks occasionally on social media and kind of dunking on other teams, it all kind of culminated around 2014. And we got into better position to show like, hey, being human and being fun and being different and bold on social can really yield high growth and engagement numbers. And we were crushing the rest of the NFL. And then the Panthers 2015 season happened, and they were a dominant force that nobody expected, and en route to a Super Bowl. And every week it was something else that would go viral, or Cam would do something or what have you. And it was like playing a video game on easy mode. Any tweet that I would send out there would just go bananas. And whether we were dunking on the guy, Dwight Schrute from The Office after we beat the Seahawks, or whether we poked some fun at the trademark issues that the then Washington Redskins was their name had there. Everything we did was a little bit different, and hopefully helped pave the way for other brands in social media.
Yeah, I remember when I was starting with the Muck Dogs, you told me winning makes everything easier. And that's something obviously I've gotten to see firsthand. But how much did your job change in your first year coming off a 2-14 season, then to a 2015 Super Bowl run? Obviously, a lot more hype around the team then. But how did that impact your day-to-day operation?
It's interesting. One thing I've learned over the past decade or so working for sports teams is winning is more fun. It's also a lot more work. So there were times when the Panthers had a bad loss, I'd be out of the stadium. If the game ended at like 4:30, I'd be out of there by 5:30. There wasn't much to do. Not a lot of storytelling. There's stuff that can be said, but sometimes people don't want to hear from a brand after you lose. You get the final score and some of the post game press conference stuff out of there, and then you're out of there. But if you win, there's a lot of storytelling opportunities, different touchdowns to highlight. And at the time, like in 2015 with the Panthers, our Spanish radio team was like a really fun piece of the puzzle there, and their calls paired with the highlights were really cool. So there was a lot of opportunity to grow the brand, and whether it was on Vine was big back then, and get stuff up on there. So it was a lot of late hours, and that season was exhausting because if you take it from training camp, you kind of started in late August. It's like 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, basically from late August all the way to late February, 7 days a week. It's a lot, and I think I felt that for like a year or two after the burnout from that season. So it was a fun ride, and you got to really force yourself to take a step back and be like, this is really special what you're enjoying here, especially when you lose the Super Bowl. But it was something that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. You learn a lot from it, and it has helped me kind of launch my career in other directions after that too, because a rising tide lifts all boats, and it really did for me. And I didn't have any personal social media at the time. I just kind of wanted to put my head down and do my job. And one of the Panthers writers for the Charlotte Observer pulled me aside and was like, nobody knows who you are, and you're doing this really good job here. You need to do a better job of that. Otherwise, you're not going to want to work here forever. And that was crazy to me. I was like, what do you mean? Of course I'm going to want to be here forever. Charlotte's great. The Panthers are awesome. Everything is running smooth. And he ended up being right. So I started kind of doing a better job of not putting myself out there, but just connecting with the community and the industry in sports business side. And it helped me in a lot of ways, grow in my career and meet people that I'm still friends with today. So that helped a lot. But the role changed, God, compared to what I'm doing now versus what I was doing then. I don't think I've sent a tweet in over 2 years for the Canes. Whereas now it's mostly my job is about emailing and hiring and putting people in position to succeed on our staff and setting a strategy, but also then taking a step back and kind of molding and allowing people to have the fun that I had, 5-10 years ago. So it's changed a lot, especially the responsibilities too. But it's fun to be on this side of the fence now and kind of look at some of my staff that was my age when I started this stuff, and they get to experience all that too, as long as the Canes are winning.
Yeah, and even for some of the age group of people on your staff right now, when you were that age, you were also going back to school. You were getting your degree
Yeah.
online at Canisius. Talk about what that really allowed you to do in your professional career, because again, that was early on in your Panthers tenure, right around
Yeah.
2012 to 2014. So how did that impact you?
Absolutely. When I finally was able to break into the sports industry and get a full-time job there, I really wanted to go back to school. It was always on my roadmap because what I did in undergrad, it was like journalism and education and communication. It was all sorts of stuff that was valuable, but I didn't really have a strong understanding of the sports industry and how it worked in terms of the sports business and how it all fit together. So getting my master's degree was always on my roadmap. And I looked at a few different programs. NC State had one, and I think Duquesne had one, and Ohio University. And when I started researching and talking to people at Canisius, I was really, really impressed with the flexibility of the program and a lot of the course material, and just how it was a very affordable option for me too. It was something that I was going to pay for myself and really like earn myself, and there was no real scholarships for this kind of thing. So it was something that I was looking forward to kind of doing and earning. And the program at Canisius excited me the most for a lot of reasons. And I'm really, really glad I went down that road. I mean, I don't have deep Buffalo roots. I really don't. I've been there a handful of times. I got a lot of friends that live up there now, that moved up there. There've been plenty of weddings up there, but I'm not a Buffalonian by nature. So it is special to have a connection with that university because they've done a really, really great job of engaging alumni, whether they've been to campus for their entire 4 or plus years, or whether they've only been there like 10 times. It's the kind of thing where it's a special university, and that program has only grown under Dr. Sean O'Rourke and many others there that have done a really good job of investing in their student success. So it was something I was proud to do and lucky to do, and it was flexible enough to work within my really demanding schedule. And I knew at some point I wanted to get back to that program because I was so appreciative of it. So when I got down here to the Canes, I reached out to Dr. O about, is there anything I do to give back? Is there anything I do to help the current students? And pretty quickly, they were able to get me onboarded to a next semester class because one of the professors was having a baby and was going to be on leave. So I said, all right, let's dive in. So I taught technology and sport. And that's my first time ever teaching. And then I think a semester or so after that, the pandemic had hit and all teaching went online. So I've been doing this for, I want to say 2 or 3 years now, and I enjoy it. There's some really great people and some special students in the Canisius community, and it gives me, a connection to somewhere that I never thought I'd have a connection to. And also college sports huge down here, right?
Yeah.
If NC State plays, Canisius in baseball, I try to get out there. I know ECU and them played basketball last year, and obviously a lot of ECU grads on my staff. And I had bets. I was like, you know what, Griffs are going to beat them this time. And so they're my dog in the fight. And I know even though I didn't spend a lot of time physically on campus, I have there's a Canisius banner right there.
Oh, nice.
So I'm obviously proud of what I was able to earn there and what I was able to do and how I'm able to still give back. And Canisius has done an awesome job of engaging me and making me feel like part of the community.
And how rewarding is that to, again, you took classes in that program less than a decade ago, and now you're teaching them and giving back and everything that you've learned over these last 10 years with the multiple organizations that you've worked for. How great is that for you?
And it's really rewarding because once you participate in a program like that, you really want to give back and you really want to help make it be the best it can be. And so I felt like a strong interest and attraction towards like investing my time and everything that I've learned, whether it be right or wrong, into get kind of helping the students get their opportunity to work in sports and experience a lot of the great stuff that I've been blessed to be able to do.
Yeah, and we'll get back on track in terms of the timeline, but you did talk about it a little bit earlier that with the Panthers, specifically right around the same time as the Super Bowl, you guys took an interesting route in terms of your social strategy. You would be a team that, like you said before, would kind of get under other organizations' skin, and you would not be afraid to clap back at them. Why did you feel like at that point in time, it was a good strategy for the Panthers to implement?
Yeah, so going back to some of the items I mentioned before, like the Panthers were never going to compete with some of the other teams in terms of relevancy or brand size or resources. And the one way they could even the playing field was by being better on social media than the other clubs. And the New York Giants love them, grew up a fan. The Dallas Cowboys, they're always going to be a little more conservative with how they approach stuff from a marketing communication standpoint. The Panthers didn't really have a lot of history, so they could afford to do that. And look, it did take some convincing because a lot of the people that were in senior leadership roles there were just really nice older Southern gentlemen, and they were always like don't be cutesy or don't be this and that. And I said, I know where you're coming from, but like trust me, this will work and this will lead to more money for us. And it took a while to show them the data of like having personality and the amount of people that would engage and people would see stuff. But once the tweets are rolling in that would have a couple of thousand retweets on there, it showed them like, all right, this can be a really good tool for us if we do it the right way. Now, there were plenty of times I got myself in trouble, and I probably should have been fired like 5 times over. But they were pretty lenient with that, and there was a great guy there named Danny Morrison, who was the team president at the time, someone I still talk to every couple of months. And he was a great leader and a good blast shield for me, because when I would make mistakes, and Lord knows there were plenty, he would kind of always vouch for me, and it wasn't always like, hey, don't do that ever again. It was like, learn from this, but we don't want to put handcuffs on you, because if you have handcuffs on you, you'll be playing scared and won't be as creative. And for a leader, especially one who, love him, but he wasn't the most social media savvy person, but he was people savvy, and he understood how the right way to manage and kind of invest in people. And without leadership like that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So it was that kind of stuff that was a lot of fun. I am shocked at some of the stuff I got away with, and I can tell you that there were other owners that have asked for me to be fired before. But it's football is a serious business. People get upset, people get feelings hurt. And I think now where we are, social media has evolved so much to where a tweet doesn't get under the skin of an owner of a billionaire anymore the same way. But you never know. It's a game with a lot of ego. And that's one thing that I've come to love about working in hockey is the NFL. When you would lose, right? Like everybody's miserable for a whole week, and it's like don't laugh in the hallways and don't make eye contact and keep your head down. Don't be a squeaky wheel. And in hockey, it's not that they don't care like less. They do. Everybody wants to win in the NHL. But I think they understand that, like, all right, you lose a game on a Tuesday, we're back at it again Thursday, and we're gonna grind and put our heads down, and I want to go win two in a row or three in a row. So there's a lot easier to turn the page and be optimistic and sort of take things less seriously and keep a more looser approach so you can overcome the hard times because the more negative you get, the harder it is to kind of dig out of that hole. Whereas I think I really appreciated how, especially the Canes are, it's like, yeah, we might lose a game, might lose three in a row, but we're going to go out and win five in a row after that, and it's going to be all right. And I think that's something that I noticed in the NBA too. I noticed it with the Islanders. It wasn't that they don't care, it's just they don't let it bother them the same way. So I've appreciated that a whole lot in terms of working in the NFL versus the NHL. And there are other subtle differences too, but the NFL takes itself seriously, and I like that teams are showing more personality now. And look, we weren't the first ones to do this. The LA Kings back in 2011 or so were really the true pioneers, but I like to think the Panthers played a role in sort of laying the groundwork for some other NFL teams to show more personality and have more fun and kind of build that community of social savvy fans.
Yeah, no doubt you certainly did. And the next stop for you, you actually went back closer to home in
Yeah.
2017, working for BSC Global. That's like
Mhm.
the umbrella company for the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Islanders, Barclays Center in general. At that point in your career, why did you feel like that was the right move?
So a lot of it was driven by the fact that my wife and I were about to have our first child, and we wanted to be closer to home and closer to family. And I also wanted to grow in my career. I was managing a couple of people at the Panthers. It was a pretty small team, and I wanted to kind of see what I could do in a different market and a different organization, and be closer to home. So BSC, they brought me up there, and they were great to work with. It was a fun time. I obviously they've got their headaches right now, but getting exposed to hockey at that level, as well as kind of working in the NBA and also in the entertainment industry for different concerts and boxing, it kind of gave me a broader look at the industry as a whole, as well as managing a team of like 20 something. So it was a great opportunity to grow and kind of be closer to home. I mean, I'm a New Yorker by nature, so it was cool to be back there for that. But after a good year there, I realized, like, it is hard and expensive to raise a family in Brooklyn, especially when you got two cats and a dog and an apartment with a baby. And it was fun. I enjoyed taking the subway and having good pizza, but ultimately, my wife and I both realized pretty quickly, I was like, yeah, we need a more rural area to raise our family and raise our kids. And that's around the time an opening popped up with the Canes, and we started talking. I had become friends with some of the people there during my time with the Panthers. So we knew each other. We would trade notes and ideas, and we got to talking, and ended up being a match where they were great to talk to because I came in as a digital person for them. They said basically, if you can help us kind of revamp our social strategy and our digital marketing strategy, like we'll kind of shift you into an overall marketing and branding role so you can kind of grow too. And that's kind of rare in sports. Usually they put you in a position and you're a cog in the wheel and keep on turning until you break or you move on to a different wheel. And they actually were going to invest in my growth and give me an opportunity to do different things and manage different stuff. So my first year with the Canes was fun and arguably my most special season. Like the Super Bowl was really cool. That Panthers 2015 season was awesome. But my favorite year of working in sports was my first year with the Canes because they had not been in the playoffs in a decade. And the brand was in this unique spot. A new guy came in to buy the team, Tom Dundon, who's been awesome. And then they had a new head coach who was the bench coach, but a legend in Carolina Hurricanes history, Rod Brindamore. They had the second overall pick in the draft, as you remember, I'm sure. Buffalo, I think, had the first pick.
We did.
You know, the Canes took Andrei Svechnikov, who's been a great dynamic young player, who's done some really special things on the ice. And the fan base was energized in a uniform too. They had the new black alternative uniform, which is now our home uniform. And there was so much going on that it was the right opportunity to sort of revamp the social strategy. And we're able to do that. And the biggest help we had was the storm surge, which I'm sure a lot of hockey fans are familiar with. It was basically a post-game celebration. It can be either crashing into the boards or as elaborate as like Evander Holyfield trotting out on the ice and pretending to knock out a player. So it was a really special time for the Canes. It was a special season, and it kind of reached its crescendo when the Canes beat the rival Capitals in think it was a double overtime win in game 7 of the first round of the playoffs. And the whole thing was just special, getting back into the playoffs and kind of revamping the social identity and all that kind of stuff. The bunch of jerk shirts, that was a long weekend. It was all like, it was so much fun and it just felt so special. And one thing I love about this arena at PNC is the press box is open air. So you're basically sitting with the fans. You're like 5 or 6 feet above the top row. So you get to really feel the energy of the arena. And that night when the Canes beat the Devils, and I think another team, I forget elsewhere in the NHL, lost, and that's kind of what put the Canes in playoff position that year and to basically clinch. Like people were hugging each other, they were crying. There was like a lot of like 10 years missing the playoffs. That can kill a team. And there's been all sorts of relocation rumors for the Canes for years. And now over the past couple of years, I've watched this brand grow, and I see more stickers on cars. I see more kids wearing Cane shirts. I see a lot of bunch of jerk shirts. Hockey is here to stay in Raleigh, and to kind of witness the first piece of that and then the forthcoming growth of it is really special. But I'll never forget that first season, just because there's just so much energy and excitement, and and it was cool to be immersed in that, and especially as someone who I didn't grow up like in hockey. I didn't watch any of it. This is all so still new to me. So it was special to just witness that. And as the only pro team in this market, it means a lot to people here. It sort of unifies all the bitter rivals between Duke and UNC and NC State, and they all kind of come here to celebrate together. And it was cool to witness that. So ever since then, yeah, we've had our pandemic and our emergency backup goalies and things like that. But it's been a good 5-year run, and we're hoping to get staffed up and kind of really, now that the Canes have been in North Carolina for 25 years, really position ourselves for the next chapter there and continue with a lot of growth here in Raleigh. And yeah.
It goes to show in both stops that you've made in Carolina, originally with the Panthers, you were an influential part with them. Now you go to the Hurricanes, and you see both of these like brands in general just continue to grow and prosper. And I think that goes to show the work that you have done and the rest of your team has done. It has been spectacular. But like you talked about, you haven't really tweeted at all in the last 2 years for the Hurricanes. But when you were doing that in that 2018 season, or even a little bit before that, what are some of the favorite posts that you've been able to put out?
Oh man. So it was around the time of the bunch of jerks stuff. That was my favorite, probably 2-day period. A lot of our staff was out. It was President's Day. They were visiting family. So I believe I was on the Keys for that game. And it reminded me of a game that the Panthers won back in 2015 during the Super Bowl season, because Cam Newton like dabbed in the end zone when he beat Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And his mom wrote like an op-ed piece about like how it was like horrible for the children, and he was dancing in the end zone. But it was the night that Don Cherry sort of went on his rant about how the Canes were a bunch of jerks for celebrating. And we had won those games. And I think that was the night, I think it was Warren Fogle did they basically did a baseball game after they had won on the ice. They pretended to pitch, and he did a bat flip, and it was something like, now we've upset people in 2 sports. That was a fun one, and that kind of led into a bunch of jerk stuffs. But the tweet that always comes to mind for me was after we beat the Caps in the playoffs. It was a double overtime victory. Brock McGinn scores the game-winning goal. It was something else. Now I know why people love like playoff hockey, because there's nothing quite as exciting as that. But we had prepped some of our dunks, for over a week, period. We had all these different things prepped. I think Avengers, I think Infinity War had just come out, and we prepped like this Thanos thing where they snapped and then the Washington logo like fades away. But the big one was a Game of Thrones tweet. They had put something out there like a week or 10 days before that. It was a picture of one of their players. I think it was Tom Wilson, like done up like Jon Snow, and it was something like, we have to claim what's ours, just like the Stanley Cup. And I came up with this idea of like, we just got to quote tweet it if we win and we eliminate them with bend the knee, which was like a famous phrase in Game of Thrones. And it was a lot of internal debate, because there was some bad blood percolating in that series. There was a lot of violence. I mean, Ovi knocked out Svechnikov, so there was a lot of stuff going on. And there was like, do we send this? Do we not send this? And I was like, yeah, we're doing it. So we wrote that tweet like 10 days in advance, and if we had won, and we sent it out there, and it exploded. And I always enjoy the fact that the Capitals did actually respond to it. They said something like, "Stay classy, Carolina," which we were like, we'll make that a T-shirt next time they play here. And we did, and we actually made a couple $1,000 off it too. So that was my most favorite one. There's been a couple others where we've kind of ribbed teams a little bit, but like we even got into it with a sponsor last year with Bud Light. Like there was this rumor going around that we were geo-gating ticket purchases outside, like you couldn't purchase them if you lived in New York. And like, yeah, of course we were, because every team does that as a Ticketmaster feature. So like, absolutely, we want to prioritize our own local fans. And Lord knows there's plenty of New Yorkers live down here. I see tons of Rangers and Sabres and Bills gear. And it became a whole story, and Bud Light hyped off on it. And we were like, all right, we got to make fun of them. And we said something like, we have plenty of free water in our arena or something. And it was received well, and it was fun. And that's the thing. You have to lean into this stuff. And you may, like, if you follow hockey, you may have seen one of our commentators made a joke or a slip of the tongue this week, which I won't repeat here, is the family podcast. But, and Trip Tracy's one of the best dudes out there, and he had fun with it. He leaned in, he referenced the Halloween candy incorrectly, and then he posted a photo on social media after. And that's the lesson there, is that you have to lean into this stuff. When self-deprecating humor to an extent can be a lot of fun. Now, if you're the Brooklyn Nets right now, wouldn't suggest it. But other brands that perhaps are struggling or like they know what they are. I think the Sacramento Kings done a good job with this. The Browns back in the day did a great job with this. That's something where you can sort of find the sweet spot of the voice of the team and the voice of the fan, and that little intersection is sort of the way to really connect and build a sense of connection with your audience.
Right. And for the last question, obviously coming from a guy who knows a whole lot about social media, a whole lot of content strategy, for someone who potentially wants to get into a career, either in marketing or content strategy, what would your advice be to a prospective student?
Yeah, I always dedicate about a week or two to this in every class of like, how do you get involved in the sports industry? How can you find a job there? And there's a couple of things that I've learned over the years that really, really help. And the first is that in sports, it's not what you know, but it's who you know. Mm-hmm. And the ability to authentically and deliberately network, and you don't want to overdo it, because no one likes anyone who's overly aggressive, like trying to connect with you. But if you're strategic about it and you really build a relationship the right way, it's going to help you so much, because so many people in sports get hired based on referrals. Like, yeah, there's teamwork online and things like that. They're valuable. You still got to apply through there to actually get considered. But it's the people that are like, I know that person, or this person was recommended. Those are the people that get the interviews, because we spend a lot of time together. We want to make sure that people are a good culture fit before they're a good, an ability fit or a professional fit. So that's item number one. Item number two is, I'm not sure what the future holds for these platforms, but Twitter is where a lot of sports communications and marketing people congregate, and I think that'll still be the case depending on what's going on with Twitter. But if it is, like, it's good to have a brand on there at some level, or an account on there that's run in a professional way, so you can sort of ingratiate yourself with that community, which helps with networking. And it also gets yourself out there, your thoughts, your ideas. And when I go through resumes when we're hiring people, if it's someone I've interacted with before, I've seen on Twitter, and they're sort of even a lightly relevant fit for the role, I'll be like, all right, let me look at them more. So those two things help a whole lot. But if you can dedicate your time to just like interacting or finding an alumni who works in sports, right? And then talking to them and asking very well-researched, thoughtful questions about what are they proud of and what advice would they give. And you don't want to come at them asking like, hey, are you guys hiring? But if you want to really build a relationship, you do that once a month with one different person. After a year, your network is that much bigger. And that's what's really going to help you get your foot in the door at any type of job. It happens all the time. I remember I had a student, I believe at Canisius, and we're talking about this, and she was asking me about social internship opportunities. And I said, well, I'll keep my eyes out. She was great conversation. And like 24 hours later, there was a social intern job popped up at, I think it was the Islanders, and I'd passed her resume along there to one of my buddies. So it can happen that quickly, and so it's important to really build up that network. I never did that when I was a student. I didn't do that. God, the first 5 years of my career, I didn't do it. So I can see the value of it now. And it's a big reason I was able to get this job at the Canes.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Again, Dan, thank you so much for coming on today. It was great to hear more about your story and all the great things that you have done. And then as well as you're very proud of your Canisius roots, which we most certainly appreciate. So again, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Griffin. Best of luck. Keep up the amazing work, and go Griffs.